to sustainability in Kiwi businesses, now is the time for action. So how are seasoned corporate sustainability leaders making progress on New Zealand's gnarliest sustainability challenges? Let's find out. I'm Jay Krangle, Head of ESG at the Sustainable Business Council.
I'm Alex Tang, Sustainable Value Partner at KPMG.
And I'm Keela Anthony, Sustainable Value Associate Director at KPMG.
In this joint SPC and KPMG podcast series, we'll be talking with leaders in the business sustainability community in New Zealand about their efforts to shift the dial on sustainability in Aotearoa, despite challenging headwinds.
Kia ora koutou katoa, no mai, haere mai. My name is Jay. Welcome to the latest episode of our Sustainability Superstars podcast. Today we are interviewing Kate van Praagh, who's currently the GM of Sustainability at Genesis. And we were talking before the podcast, and she describes herself as a mum, a nature lover, and a waver of jazz hands, which I quite introduced. Sadly, this is a podcast, so we won't be able to see that. But we talked a little bit about the fact that she has been in sustainability for over 20 years, and that her driving force for the work that she does is enabling sustainability to be accessible to everyone. It's for the masses. And her career choices have been because she works for organisations that enable sustainability to be embedded in everything that they do. So welcome, Kate.
Kia ora, Jay and Alex. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
I am waving them.
Brilliant. Kia ora, Jay. Kia ora, Kate. And as you hear, so you are a mum. So maybe this question will be somewhat easier. Our starting point, and it resonates with that. How do we make sustainability accessible? Is how would you describe your job to a 5-year-old?
Yeah, and this is a tricky one because sustainability is full of jargon. But luckily, I have a test at home, and I have got 2 girls who are very engaged in the world and ask lots of questions, and we have lots of deep chats. And I asked them to describe what I do. They're 9 and 12, so a little bit older. But they said, your job is to help look after nature and people like a nurse for nature, which I thought was a great way to describe it. So I guess expanding on that a little bit, I work for a company that makes electricity, which is probably a little tricky for a 5-year-old to grasp, but it means that you can have warm baths and watch cartoons on TV. And so my job is to make sure that we're being a good company and doing the right thing for people and for nature.
I love it. I love that nurse for nature concept. It's funny because in other sessions we've talked about ambulances at the bottom of cliffs, but this really gives the sense of no, we want to try and avoid that ambulance and front foot it. So nurse for nature is brilliant. Love it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm not sure that I could describe electricity or understand it either, Kate. So it's nice that you framed it around being able to watch cartoons. I greatly value that.
What matters? What matters to a 5-year-old?
Exactly. I can watch Severance, which is my latest interest. Anyway.
Well, I won't be promoting that. Maybe Bluey.
This is true. Bluey. I am interested to hear, particularly given that you work in the energy sector, which in itself is a gnarly beast. What is your most gnarly challenge that you're dealing with, either in your role or more broadly, Kate?
Well, I think, everything about sustainability probably is a wicked challenge. But I guess when we talk about those big gnarly sustainability challenges, for Genesis and I guess for New Zealand as well, it's really about moving energy generation to renewables. We know that as a country, we really want to get to net zero 2050. And so we want around 95% renewables. And we also, and this is the challenge, we want power 100% of the time. So we always want to be able to, to put the TV on or to warm up our home or to cook our dinner. And then in our sector, we talk about intermittency, which is another bit of a jargon. But what does it mean? It means, the sun's not always going to shine, the wind's not always blowing. We're really privileged to operate hydro schemes in some of the most beautiful areas of New Zealand. But sometimes those lakes are low. So we need something to step in to provide power. Many people might be aware that the gas has decreased much faster than was predicted. So increasingly, coal has been relied on to step in to provide this backup. This is a sustainability podcast, and obviously coal is not great from an emissions point of view, but it's a big part of the challenge. So it's really why we've been looking into biomass to hopefully, lower emissions, provide some real security and some backup, provide resilience for Aotearoa as a country, and hopefully, add some boost to the local economy as well, all going well.
Nice, Kate. And I like the idea of 95% renewables 100% of the time. I've just made Genesis a new slogan, so you can send my check in the post.
Well, I'm sure Malcolm will be very familiar. The other one is 60% electrification, so it's 60% electrification, nice. 95% renewable 100% of the time. That's our mantra.
It's such a, as you said, such a wicked challenge, but also what's nice about it is the opportunity and prosperity around it as well, and the fact that it makes sense from just a general efficiency and a cost perspective. And I know you're at the recent Climate Change and Business Conference where there was a lot said about the advances in renewable technology and how that's going to support and help meet those objectives. So the next question kind of almost it's related to that wicked challenge, and it's what have you learned? What's the biggest lesson from tackling that challenge? Obviously on the electrification side, but I'd also love to expand a little bit, because we talked at the start a little bit about how do you make this accessible for more people, and both at Genesis and your previous role, some of the most consumer-facing organizations that need to step into that conversation with people at large. So really keen to hear your biggest lesson from tackling the challenge of electrification that you mentioned, but also with that interesting role with the consumer.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of lessons. Where do I start? I think, I guess balance is one of them. And when it comes, I touched on that a little bit, so we do need to make sure that we're moving to renewables, but we also need to think about affordability and energy well-being, how people are keeping their homes warm and that accessibility part. And also at the same time, making sure the lights go out. So that balance is really, really important to bring to everything. And I kind of think building on that, it's really about, I guess, my personal driver, which is accessibility and, bringing the masses along. So I think sustainability is not only for those who can afford, the newest, flashiest Tesla. It's about bringing everyone on the journey. There's always going to be the kind of, those leading from the front and transitioning to new technology fast, which is great. We need those people, but how then do we get that to flow through? And I think that's where large organisations are really central. They can buy cars for their fleet, which then end up on the second-hand market, which then reduces the cost over time. I think it's about really trying to build, I guess, understanding of the benefits, like you said, for the consumer. So it's not about rushing out and wholesale changing everything in your house. It's about thinking, your heater's broken. How should you replace it? A heat pump is a great option. It is much more energy efficient. It is going to, bring your whole energy costs down over time, which is fantastic. So it's about thinking about, the small ways, the real communication about bringing everyone along with you, and making sure that things are as accessible as possible, whether that's, putting in better curtains, I think, as a start, making sure your home's really insulated, warm, making a door snake to go under your doors. We've had run some workshops with some of our community partners where we've got employees to make warm-up kits for homes. So all those kinds of things are all really important. They all build up and, put everyone on the journey, and are really all about part of the same goal, I guess.
I love the point about bringing everyone with us, because that's one of our big challenges broadly right now, right? Where we see this sense that, some of the things that we talk about are just the domain of people who can afford to, and that's not helping in terms of pulling people together and making sure that we're all on this journey. So I love that concept of how do we make sure that all happens.
20 years in sustainability is a good innings, Kate. You're still standing, as Elton John would say. How have you seen things evolve over your time in the space?
I think huge evolution. I think, the world changes extremely quickly. And I think, that pace is increasing. I don't know if that's just because I'm getting older or if it's a literal, effect. But I guess when I started 20 years ago, it was a little bit of a niche. It was more about community relations, corporate social responsibility, kind of add-on things, might have been a CEO's pet love, supporting an animal charity. But I think probably the biggest change is the integration of sustainability or environmental, social, and governance thinking into business as usual. And that's about making sure that, we focus on the areas of biggest impact for the organisation and for all of the stakeholders it interacts with. So obviously with Genesis, climate transition and emissions reduction is front and centre for us, as well as energy wellbeing. But I think that governance is super important, and that's really about the way in which the companies run, how transparent we are, our openness and our great relationships and partnerships that we build, all of those things. And I think there's much more understanding about the interrelationship between sustainability and the business, and really focusing on impact.
Amazing. And just following up on that, Kate, have you noticed, and it's really interesting, right? Even just your title as general manager of sustainability, not head of sustainability, but the language that we use now and how has that evolved, and obviously the conversations that you have internally, do you feel that that's shifted as well?
Yeah, I feel it has shifted, and there's lots of things that have brought about this change, from mandated climate-related disclosures, obviously a focus on risk and resilience. I'm a massive fan, talking about language, of using simple language, and that's why I loved opening with the focus on explaining it to a 5-year-old, because even the name sustainability, sometimes I, try and not use that. Because I'd far rather talk about the practice being making sure an organisation is resilient, knows the context in which it's operating, has its eyes wide open about challenges and risks that are coming from the future, thinking about how it's going to respond to that, but then also thinking about the opportunities, because there are lots of opportunities. And I think it's really important for us as a sector, as a practice, to really focus on that, on painting that positive world that we really, that we want, that we all feel with a passion, instead of getting into the, the doom, I guess.
The doom that can be paralyzing, can put people off, can make people wonder whether it's worth it. I agree. I think this opportunities positivity is, it's challenging because there is the reality of what we're facing, but people don't necessarily get motivated by that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess following on from that, if you had the opportunity to talk to your earlier self, your younger self, what would be maybe a piece of advice, and relevant now, obviously, for the many young folk who are getting into this profession, but maybe, what would you tell yourself?
Young folk, Alec,
Young
you're
folk.
showing your age. Those whippersnappers.
All of those rangatahi. I think, so young Kate was lucky enough to meet, when I was at university, I worked for the Body Shop. And I was lucky enough to meet Dame Anita Roddick, who was the founder of the Body Shop. So I guess one of the early pioneers of business or corporate sustainability, and really embedding, positive outcomes that a business could contribute to. And she wrote in the book, she was launching a book, and she was traveling around to lots of body shops all around the world. And she wrote in the front of my book, "If you think you're too small to make a difference, try spending a night with a mosquito." And that quote, I think, has resonated throughout my career. Those of you who have met me know that I am of small stature. So that's probably had a part to play. But aside from that, I think every one of us has an opportunity to make a difference. And we just have to remember that. It's like the same example about, one person can throw a bottle into the ocean, and it's only one bottle. But then if everyone did that, the scale is huge. And I think on the flip side, that positive change can be huge as well. And it just starts one person to roll the snowball, and then, others join in, and it keeps rolling and it keeps growing. And so I think reflecting on that, it's really about, building a network, starting small, making sure that you are filling your cup all the time, getting out and about in nature. We go hiking with my kids. We just did the Abel Tasman last year, and next year we're doing the Heafy Track. It's about really remembering, connecting back to what the why, your personal purpose, and why it matters. And so I think keep doing that. And I think remembering that you're never going to know everything. You're never going to be an expert. A couple of years ago, I knew nothing about biomass. I'm quickly having to learn a lot about it. But this area moves so fast and the world moves so fast, you can't know everything. There will be particularly experts, and you can draw on their expertise. But what you're bringing is, I guess, that umbrella view and bringing people together, painting that image, painting that journey, and using your skills as a mosquito to really make a difference.
I love it. I think that quote's great, and I I love the fact that you bring in as well the impact people have. You sometimes don't see that, but actually even the smallest things can mean such a big thing for someone else. Can trigger a thought, trigger a conversation. And the other thing I enjoy is the part I love about this sector is you get the opportunity to dive in and learn about biomass, and learn about sustainable finance, and learn about all these other amazing things. And that integrating, it brings back one of the points you made earlier about integration is so important, and having people who can look beyond silos and boundaries and pull really interesting facts together, I think is great. But the mosquito quote. I'm going to now hesitate anytime I see a mosquito.
Yeah, a positive mosquito.
Yeah, positive
Stings
mosquito.
for good.
Yeah, thank it for its persistence. Yeah. Thank you, Kate. You've had some wonderful observations there. I always learn something when I speak to you. I like what you had to say about what sustainability looks like. It's not necessarily using that term. It's about organizational resilience, keeping your eyes wide open to the future challenges and risks, but also leaning into the opportunity. I think if businesses can get all three of those right, then they will be a lot better for it, because as you said, we will end up with a positive world we all want to live in, with or without mosquitoes. I don't know. That's for another podcast. Thank you for your time today, Kate. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you both.